Good morning, Scrappy friends. Long time no see. But I have fixed my filming setup and I'm trying something new, so please let me know if this works. But I have an assignment for Cocoa Vanilla, and the assignment is cut files. And my friend Laura Wansick on Instagram had shared this really fun technique where she it looked like she did watercolor and then used that to back her cut file. So I'm going to attempt something similar today. So what I did was I cut my cut file. These are cut files from the Cut to Use shop for Cocoa Vanilla. I cut it on cardstock, and then I cut it again on vellum. And I have a bunch of distress oxides in front of me, and I'm gonna use the packaging technique. And I have some cold pressed watercolor paper that I will eventually figure out how to get out of here. But I have some cold pressed watercolor paper, so I'm going to do some packaging watercolor type thing on the watercolor paper, let it dry, and then I'm going to back my vellum cut file combination on the watercolor paper so you see the mixed colors show through. And if everything goes as planned, then that should be a really cool effect. And then here is the photo I'm documenting. It's a selfie I took on my birthday. I haven't figured out if I'm going to use the Happiness collection or the Unforgettable collection because they're both beautiful. But that's where I'm at. That's where I am. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to speed this up and we're going to get to work. All right, crafty friends, so let's switch gears for a little bit. So off camera, what I did was I did the packaging technique on my watercolor papers, and for the greens, I used Mowed Lawn, Evergreen Bough, and Pine Needles Distress Oxides. For the yellow and the orange, I used Ripe Persimmon and Mustard Seed, and for the pinks, I used Picked Raspberry, Worn Lipstick, and a little bit of Ripe Persimmon to add some orange to it. There are tons of videos on the packaging technique if you want like some tips on it, but pretty much all you do is you drop some color on a bit of plastic. And the reason people call it the packaging technique is because most people use the plastic that ephemera or cardstock stickers come in, and then you add some water and you drop it on your watercolor background and you blend it. So I skipped all that because it took me a fair bit to get it the way I wanted, and then I had to dry it with my heat tool, and that just took more time than I wanted to leave in this video because we're talking about cut files. So here's the important part. So for cut file tips, I normally like to cut my cut files on a relatively thin cardstock, like 65 pound. Like I wouldn't use 110 pound cardstock to cut a cut file, just because I like when they're a little bit more malleable, they're easier to work with for me. Also, as far as tools go, I like to have a really fine tipped pair of scissors. So you see my fussy cut scissors, they're from EK Tools. I like to have my glue in a fine line bottle. I use the 18 gauge fine line bottle because having glue with a really, really fine point is going to make all the difference when it comes to backing a cut file. And then you need a pencil for tracing. That's pretty much it when it comes to tools for using a cut file on a layout. Obviously, you need a machine to cut out the actual cut file, but when it comes to recreating the layout, you don't need very many supplies, just scissors, glue, and a pencil. So I've edited out the trimming down of the cut file because I'm not very good when it comes to this, so it took a lot of trial and error for me to get the shapes to match. I outlined it, and then I had to go back and cut it again, and then I had to go back and cut it again, and it just didn't work until now. So now you see I have the offset vellum behind my flowers, and then I have the watercolor background behind that, and I think it came out so good. And then because I was going for more of an abstract look, I chose to leave the edges of my backing paper intentionally messy. If you've seen any of my videos, if you've looked at any of my layouts, I am a messy scrapbooker. I like the look of contained mess as long as it's contained. And so I left the edges on my backing paper a tiny bit rough just to add some extra interest. And layering it over the vellum, it looks... Oh, I'm so grateful Laura shared that technique that she did in her layout because it's so pretty. Like I love the way it came out. I love the offset. It adds like a little bit of dreaminess behind the flowers, and the flowers themselves are just beautiful to begin with. So you see, I've decided to use the Happiness collection for my layout. So I pulled out my 9x12 pouch that I keep I like to keep all my collections together because I like to scrap by collection. That's just a personal choice. So I keep everything together. So I have that 9x12 pouch with all my stuff. And now I'm working on matting my photo. I like having really big photo mats. I just like the texture, and also I love pattern paper, and having a bunch of patterns behind a photo is a really easy way to add interest and to use patterns that you might not have used otherwise. So I have my photo, I'm matting it, I use my little guillotine trimmer to trim the papers down behind my photo. And I typically start with a black and white. If I have a color photo, I like to start with a black and white matte. And if I have a black and white photo, I like to start with a brightly colored matte. I think it just adds a little bit of interest. I don't know if it does or if that's just something I'm making up, but I personally think it adds a little bit of contrast having the black and white behind a color photo. And like I said, the photo that I'm scrapping is a selfie I took on my 29th birthday. So that's what I'm working with. And then finally, I chose to put the photo on vellum because I already have vellum behind my flowers. So I thought it'd be fun to repeat that texture in the layout itself. Also, vellum just adds, I personally think vellum adds like dreaminess and all those like fun things to layout because it's soft and the transparent look. I like it a lot. So now I'm trying to figure out how I want to arrange my flowers around my photo. I knew I wanted to tuck my photo behind that big flower and then put the smaller flower on top. And eventually I decided to put the flower behind my head. It would have been easier if my head was facing the other way because then I could put the flower on top of my head. But I wanted the big flower to be mostly off to the left, so then I had to make the smaller flower mostly off to the right. This is just the thing I do. Like, I don't have any design theory or reasons why I do it, but that's just what I do. So now I end up auditioning a bunch of pattern papers for my layout. I am terrible at using pattern paper backgrounds. I don't know how to do it. I keep trying, but I just don't know how to do it. So I auditioned a bunch of pattern paper backgrounds, and I almost used that wreath paper, but the flowers just didn't work. Like, the coloring in my flowers didn't work. And eventually I give up, and I go with Old Faithful, which is white cardstock. Eventually, I will figure out how to use a pattern paper background, but today's not that day. So I went with white cardstock, but to add interest, I did pull out some pattern papers. And so here's a tip. If you want to use a pattern paper background, but you don't feel comfortable using a whole pattern paper, then use half, which is what I ended up doing. I ended up using half of a pattern paper, and Zoe does such a good job with matching the A side to the B side of the pattern papers. So if you want to use two patterns, use the same paper. Like she does. I wish I understood how Zoe came up with these wonderful designs for her collections, but she's brilliant, and thank God for her because I get to play with all this fun stuff. So I used the A side and the B side of this super fun pattern paper. The flowers in it the paper has flowers that have a fair bit of blue in it, and there's no blue on the flowers that I backed, so I eventually just chose to add blue embellishments to my layout to tie in that blue color. But it has the orange, and it has pink, and it has yellow, and it has greens. It's like the perfect backing choice. So I stuck that down, and you see I ripped the edges because it's not a me layout unless there's ripped edges somewhere on the page. So I ripped the edges, and now I'm just working on embellishing. So I used just regular tape to stick the paper down to my background, and I'm fishing out my title first because I want to make sure I have space for my title, and I end up going with The Good Life. I love that the Happiness collection and a lot of the collections from Coco Vanilla include this like cardstock title pack because it's a really easy way to come up with titles. And if I had my way, all my titles would be Love This or something really generic, but having all these fun words to put a title together from just makes it really easy. Although The Good Life is probably a really generic title, but Year 29 is going to be great, so that's why I went with The Good Life. Another tip that I forgot to share earlier is I found this vellum tape. I can't take all the credit for it. My friend Elizabeth Hines shared a layout she made where she used vellum tape, and it's transparent tape. So if you're using vellum, it's a really, really good supply to have on hand because if you've worked with vellum before, because it's transparent, adhesive shows through the background. But if you use this vellum tape, because it's completely clear, nothing shows through. So another supply to have on hand if you're going to be working with vellum. So now I'm sorting through the happiness ephemera pack, and I'm just figuring out what I want to use. Like you see, I have that half a wreath. That's because I used the other half on another layout, and since only half of it was showing, I saved the other half for later. My scrapbooking style, because I haven't made a video in a long time, I don't know how many people have watched me make stuff before. I am very much a pick it and stick it kind of girl. There is not much rhyme or reason to why I put things where I put things. I tend to just grab stuff and put things behind the photo. I like to have things behind the photo and on top of the photo. I like the way that the layers look on a layout. I think it adds dimension, and I think it's pretty fun to have things stacked. So I'll put things behind the photo, and then I'll put things behind the photo mats. So there are things like in between the mats, and then on top of the mats, and then on top of the picture itself. And I think that just adds I think it adds interest. I think it adds a little bit of fun having things at different heights on the scrapbooking layout. Also, I like to prop things up on foam. I like to add chipboard, things that are just going to add different heights to the layout. It just adds interest and it makes it fun. So like you see on top, I put my backed flower on the very back of all the photo mats, and then I put that pink flower between the photo mats. So it's on top of the backed flower, but behind my photo. And then I just add things at different levels. I'm working off of the color scheme that I've already created, so I have a lot of pinks and oranges and yellow because that's what's in my backed flowers. But then I add that tiny bit of blue on the left to tie in the blue on the pattern paper on top, and then that Stay Colorful piece just has all the colors, so it works really well because my name's Tashiana and rainbow's my favorite color. So now I'm just adding more bits and pieces. These tiny flowers come from the ephemera pack, and they're like perfect accent pieces. And the other thing I like to do when I'm scrapbooking is I like to create the whole photo complex together. So you notice everything is stuck to my photo and nothing stuck to my page as yet, because now I can pick up my whole photo ephemera conglomeration thing and move it to different sides of the page to make sure that it fits exactly where I want it to. So I added that blue butterfly to the right side to again tie in the blue on the right side, and then I added that that cardstock tag from the cardstock sticker sheet, just because the right side felt kind of naked and the left side had all this stuff going on. So that's it. My photo complex is complete. I'm going to go ahead and stick this all down, and then I'm going to add the title. And after that, there's nothing really to do on this layout. So I'm just going to put some music on. I'll let you watch me finish up the page. I have some still photos at the end of the layout so you can see close-ups. And again, if you head to the blog, all the details for how I made this page are up on the blog, as well as with links to all the happiness products. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to be back making regular YouTube videos now that I've figured out my filming setup and my husband has fixed my computer so I can film things again. So fingers crossed that this sticks, because I really miss hanging out with you guys and making scrapbook videos. So to the signature sign off, till next time, keep it crafty, friends, and have the very best day.